In this video, I wanted to show a little Bible here that I think is a really neat piece of history. This is something I just got off of eBay, and you can get some really neat Bibles for quite an affordable price. This was only $25, and it is a Revised Standard Version by Thomas Nelson. And looking inside, this was actually from the 1950s, and yet it is in really good condition. It is a black leather cover. The leather doesn't seem like anything all that great, just kind of like a genuine leather, I guess. Might even be stamped, but it's still pretty nice looking. Obviously has stood the test of time. The stamping on the side there looks really nice, and it's got these tooled ribs. It says it's a Holy Bible with helps. Has that tooled line on the edge here. On the edges of the pages, it just has red art gilt, no gold. And then there is a red ribbon and head and tail bands that look like they're red and yellow. It is a paste down liner, and this material here kind of has almost like a linen texture to it. But this is where you can see the time period it's from. The presentation page here is filled out, and it says May 25th, 1958. Really interesting looking title page. Really beautiful, multicolored there with such a nice artistic design. I think Thomas Nelson is the first publisher to produce the Revised Standard Version. So this really is a neat piece of history. You can see here on the copyright page that they published this in New York as well as some other places. I think this, though, is an American printing. It does say actually here manufactured in the United States of America. So it looks like then it would have been published in New York. Has a preface here to the Revised Standard Version. Books of the Bible. And looking at the text here, you can see that it is a paragraph format. I think that the Revised Standard Version has always been printed in a paragraph format as opposed to verse by verse. One of its features, the beginning of the paragraphs have a little bit bigger verse numbers, and then the middle of the paragraphs have smaller verse numbers. And I actually think that's something you'll still see today in the new Revised Standard Version, the update of this translation of the Bible. It does have poetic setting. So you see in some parts of the Bible, historical sections, you have that regular paragraph. There are actually notes on the bottom here. And then in the poetic sections, you have these stanzas. And that paper quality, you can see, really is nice. There's not a lot of show through here. I'm just so impressed with how well this has held up. So I guess this was not used a lot. I guess that's the downside, but it was probably in an environment that was not too moist. I think that this print, it is very small, but it's still pretty easy to read. Although I think that the other Revised Standard Version that I have, which I actually looked at it more, I think this is from the 1960s, whereas this is the 1950s. This, I think, is printed a little bit larger and easier to read, and it is put out by Augsburg Press, but this is also a Revised Standard Version. Still, though, for its time period, I think this is very nicely printed and quite easy to read. Another neat feature about this Bible are the illustrations throughout. There are various places where there are illustrations, as you can see here. It did say that in the back of the Bible there are helps. So these are the helps to the study of the Revised Standard Bible. And basically what you see here are all the books of the Bible, and each book is given an overview, kind of a background, like something you would see maybe at the beginning of a book in a study Bible, but just, a few paragraphs, not a whole lot there. So kind of like book overviews, introductions, a little bit of the background. And then at the end you have the map section. And I have to say, for the 1950s, I was so impressed with how beautifully these were printed. And I hope it shows up well on camera here, because these are really nice maps. I've never seen maps from this time period that look so nice, so it was really a treasure to be able to find something like this kept in such good condition. I mentioned that the printing is small, but if we look at the dimensions here, we're only looking at a Bible that's a little over 7.5 inches by 5 3/8 inches by about 1 3/8 inches. That's just an estimate, but you're really looking here at a pretty small Bible, very easy to carry. It's really just something that you could use to bring to church and take places and have a pretty portable format. I do think modern Bibles, they get larger print into a size like this, but for its time period, I still think that printing is nice and crisp and actually isn't too hard to read. So that's just a little bit of a look at this Thomas Nelson Revised Standard Version from the 1950s. Really, as I said, a cool piece of history. Thank you so much for taking a look at this Bible with me from A Frisch Perspective.